Hi, everybody. Welcome to third session on prayer, and thank you for joining me. Today I had an interview, and it was one of those interviews that was absolutely enchanting. And I want to open this program tonight with an anecdote, a little story from that, because it sometimes someone shares something with me, and it's so delightful. So we were talking about prayer, and this interviewer, who's a young woman, said that she said, I actually wrote it down because it was so cute. She said that she saved prayers for special occasions because she thought, well, they were so special and so powerful that she could only pray on special occasions. I said, what? And she said, yeah, no, they're so powerful. I only prayed on special occasions. And then she told me, and this is leading right into the prayer I want to talk to you about first of all, which is holy imagination. And she said that she was in a job and it was just awful, and she felt she was with people that weren't nice, and she felt that she was stuck, and she had children, and so she didn't feel particularly mobile. So it was time to pray because it was a special occasion because she was in bad shape. And she said, and I wish I could duplicate the way she told this, because I could just imagine how she prayed in this kind of incredible, sweet innocence. She said, I said to God, I don't know how I got myself into this situation, but can you help me get out? And there was something about the way she said that I thought, if I were God, I would have just swept down right away and made everything better. And so she said, in a couple of weeks, she got fired. And so she said to God, I don't think this is what I meant. I'm telling you, I was hysterical. I don't think this is what I meant, but all right. But shortly after that, she got her dream job. It was more than she ever anticipated, more than she could have, quote, imagined. It was it was perfect. But I mean, even her response, well, this isn't what I had in mind, but she went along with it. I mean, what can you do? I just thought that was enchanting. Saving prayers for special occasions. I love that. I wanted to talk about holy imagination because it's something that I want to infect you with. I want you to kind of really understand the power of your imagination at the sacred level. At the sacred level. When we're kids and we encounter imagination, people will oftentimes, you're just imagining that. You're just, how often do we hear that? How many times you're watching a movie and they see something and someone says, you're just imagining that. So that the idea of imagination is that it's not real, that whatever it is you're dealing with is not real. It's just somehow or other an image that you've self conjured up, and it's not real. When in fact, it's what is possible. It's what could happen. How many times I have worked with people who are confronting crises or illnesses. And I sometimes can get this sense of how they could work their way out, what the possibilities of how you could get out of something. And their response is, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine myself doing that. I can't imagine myself saying that. When you're in a situation where you are losing your power to something, losing your power to someone in a power struggle somehow. And you've got to break that. You've got to break that current between you and that other. And you have to separate from that. You have to figure out a way to say something. And I've said to people, why don't you say this? Why don't you think this way? I can't imagine. I can't imagine saying that. I can't imagine being that person who can do that. I can't imagine. So that their imagination of what they can imagine themselves doing is so limited. And yet, where people don't limit their imagination is in the dark side, where they imagine fears doing all kinds of things to them. What Teresa of Avila would call reptiles. There we don't parameter our imagination at all. Think about how controlled life is by fears, by what you anticipate happening, about all you imagine that could possibly happen that never does, about decisions you want to, how you think about your life, that what could be, but because of what you imagine happening, that absolutely never does, but you imagine it. Of what you imagine could happen in a relationship if you were to change the power dynamics, so it never does. Or you imagine yourself alone, so you never do this, that, this. Or you imagine this, or you imagine that. So all of these imaginings in the dark side of imagination keep you paralyzed. You imagine what people will say if you fail. You imagine all of these things. And in this theater in your head of imagination, you play out scenarios that never see the light of day. They never manifest. They never happen. But all of this is in your imagination. Think about how many times you imagine disasters, losing all your money if you get close to God. Oh, well, I can't do that because God will take all my money. I mean, the nonsense people come up with. But that's the power of imagination on the dark side. But rarely do people go over to the holy side, to the cosmic side of imagination, to the sacred side, to holy imagination, to wondering, I wonder what things would be like if I engaged the power of the sacred in the things that I'm doing. I wonder how that would change. I wonder how things would be different if my alliedship was with the invisible world. In one of the questions this reporter asked me today, she said, how do you pray? I mean, how do you, about surrender? She said, do you ever, surrender, what is that for you? And I said, well, when I can't figure something out, the way I pray is that when I go to bed at night, I will say, I don't know what to do here. I'm surrendering this to you. Figure it out. I'm going to sleep. And that's what I do. And it doesn't occur to me that isn't going to be figured out by the morning. I surrender it completely. And in my imagination, I realize I do not have the imagination that's wide enough, clever enough, cosmic enough to come up with a solution to this. Left to my devices, I will just imagine things familiar. And a lot of the problems we have in life require something unfamiliar, something new, something we've never thought about before. That's why we need an alliedship with the invisible world. And that's the prayer that's here. You do this. You figure it out. I am going to bed. I don't even want to think about this anymore. That's it. I need a good night's sleep. You deal with it. Good night. And that's the prayer. And I go to sleep. And then in the morning, I fully expect somehow or other that day some resolution is going to come into my life. And as I pointed out to her, when you pray with surrender, you don't get to say to heaven, oh, by the way, before I turn the lights out, don't tamper with this. Don't do this. Don't. Surrender is surrender. You don't get to put parameters around. Surrender is truly a prayer of faith that says it's not about giving up and saying, I just am defeated. It's about saying, I don't have your imagination. I surrender. You know what? I don't know what's going on here. So you take charge of this. I really don't know what's going on here. And I'll tell you, here's a clue. Now I know that when situations get complicated, and a lot of things start getting difficult at the same time, this breaks down, that, you get fired, you get this, everything at once. That's when we're likely to really, really collapse and think, I just can't take anymore. That's an ordinary mortal's way of responding. And I've been there many times until one day, many years ago, I took a look at, and everything was going wrong. What we think of as wrong. Because AKA, it wasn't going my way. I sat back and I thought, no human, we could, what is normal is to say, it's your fault this is going, and it's your fault, and it's your fault. I finally looked at everything and I thought, you know what? Only heaven could mess up my life this much. This is not a crisis. This, I know it's not my version of guidance. I don't like it. But something else is going on here. I don't like it. This isn't my preference. I would rather a letter, a FedEx, something. But obviously, it's time for me to do something. And so I'm just going to let the walls of this building fall, and then I'll take it from there. When there's nothing else you can do, get out of the way and surrender to what's happening. Just get out and let everything collapse, and then walk in and say, okay, now what do you want me to do? And believe me, the thread's going to be there. And that's what surrender's about. When it's that big, when it's so obvious that I can't stop the walls from collapsing, get out of the way and let them collapse. Let them fall. And that is, believe it or not, participating in, okay, this is what's supposed to happen. And that's what I have since lived by that creed. So that's what I said to her, was I just turn it over. And I do not tell heaven, don't let that wall collapse. Don't let that heaven collapse. I'm like, whatever, because if you're going to take it, it's going to go. So just make sure that when I wake up in the morning, I'm pointed in the right direction, and I'll take it from there. Because what we have to understand is heaven will not do our work for us. Heaven will not do what we are meant to do, what we are designed to do. Heaven will never intervene when it is up to us to do the task. We can get all the guidance in the world, but we'll never be told what to do. guidance heaven will never do the task for us. So, I want to read the prayer of holy imagination because I really wrote this because I wanted to, I was thinking about exactly that, which is to have an allyship with the invisible world. What could happen if your imagination was cosmic in proportion? If you could allow the unimaginable to be part of your imagination. If you could allow something and say, look, I need a solution here that I cannot imagine. I can't imagine how to get out of this, so I'm turning it over to you. I can't. I'm out of solutions. So I need the holy end of this to take over because I can't do. And it is a part surrender and it's part realizing that I've imagined as much as I can. And I need your help. So help me out here. That's what holy imagination is. And that includes the possibility, for example, of saying, I can't imagine you're intervening in ways that I don't see. I can't imagine you helping me out here. I can live in that truth. I can live there. My imagination is big enough to include your presence in my life at all times. So wherever I am, I'm not going to say to myself that I am living an accident or a mistake. So I don't talk to myself that way. So wherever I am, somehow or other, you're going to get me, you're going to be with me and get me through wherever I am. So let me just read this prayer. And there was one I picked to go with it. I know I'm only supposed to do a couple, but I never pay attention. If I made up the rules, I can change them. So this is holy imagination. The older I get, Lord, the more I marvel at how you designed us. I am deeply enchanted by and in awe of the capacity of my soul to imagine what my mind cannot comprehend. I sometimes just observe the way my mind works. Left to its own devices, it wanders back into my history, rummaging through the mysteries left unsolved, wondering why things happened as they did and reviewing unfinished conversations. It's often not a pleasant experience, Lord, except when I go back to collect wisdom. What did I learn? What will I never do again? I'm not sentimental about the past, Lord, and I have few attachments to it. But I do want to gather the knowledge I've gained from my life and put it to good use. And it seems that knowledge and wisdom are currency in my soul. They fuel my liftoff into visionary altitudes where I can dwell in wonder about what is unfolding in the world below. In my soul, I can comprehend the fluidness of creation and how rapidly humanity can collectively shift an outcome. That is our power. Yet we fear intimacy, so we collectively push away the truth that we are one mystical body all breathing together. The Buddha saw this, and Jesus taught that, but somehow it is the ultimate threat to our five senses. And so we live in physical bodies in which we are constantly communicating to our cell tissues to act aggressively toward each other, that we are one another's enemy. The message we transmit to the planetary community is identical to the one we absorb in our physical bodies. We just cannot manage to live the truth that what is in one is in the whole. So simple, so obvious, and yet so terrifying. We could heal so many illnesses in an instant by uniting the power of our soul's imagination and grace, if only we were not so afraid of our own wholeness and the same power in others. Now, when I was writing that, I realized that part of holy imagination is to imagine what we could do together, what what humanity could be like if we actually lived the sacred truths that we're taught. If we actually started to live those. If we actually really began to live what is in one is in the whole. If and it's really as simple as that. Why are we so afraid to imagine a planet getting along together? Imagining that. Why are we so afraid to imagine that everybody can actually cooperate together? Why are we so afraid to imagine an equalizing of power? Why are we so afraid of that? But we are. But we are. It's somehow or other we can't seem to bring ourselves to imagine something at the cosmic level that big, that's that incomprehensible. That's where we get into imagine, no, that could never happen. No, that, why not? Why not? Why can't we, it's like, for example, if a person can heal their illness, let me say it this way, if an illness can be healed rapidly, if an illness can be healed that faster than ordinary time, this is what's called a miracle. They call it a miracle because it's healed faster than in ordinary time and because it's usually considered unhealable. But it does happen. And if that can happen to one person, why can't it happen to a collective experience like an epidemic or a pandemic? Why couldn't it just happen that a number of people shift the health of the whole? Because it is the workings of law. If enough people, we are the collective immune system. If enough people united their soul power, it could happen. This isn't like New Age la nonsense. This is the technology of the soul. This could happen. In fact, this would happen. It takes a whole lot of, I think, collective belief. Take your life. You may be dealing with an illness, or you may be dealing with a situation that, from an ordinary point of view, doesn't have an ordinary solution. But what if you opened up to your holy imagination tonight and you said, that's it, I can't, I'm out of solutions? What if you had a prayer that said, you know what, I can't do this anymore on my own, so I'm going to surrender this to you. I'm going to completely surrender this prayer, this situation to you, and I'm going to sleep. So you take care of it, and you work it out, and I don't know what you're going to do, but I have no doubt it's going to change my life, and I'll deal with whatever changes you put into place, because that's the bargain. You change it because that's what this change requires, and I'm going to sleep. And go ahead and say that prayer. Try that one out and watch what happens. And by the way, when you pray with that kind of faith and that kind of prayer, and you wake up in the morning, this isn't Santa Claus. Don't look for a gift under a tree. When you wake up in the consciousness that prayer has been answered, and that forces are in motion behind the scenes within the holy atmosphere in which you live. That that prayer is in motion. This is something. Hold this thought in your head for the rest of your life. Another question I get asked quite often, do you believe every prayer is answered? Well, of course every prayer is answered. It's how it's answered that it's worth understanding. A prayer is not answered like a mathematical problem, like here's the problem, here's the answer. Here's the prayer, here's the answer. It doesn't work like that. Prayers are mystical. Mystical conversation. They're mystical, and so is the way the response is, and it's now this is going to take something to hold in your head, but the way prayers are answered somehow or other includes you and includes more than you, and it includes the whole of your life, and it includes other people. We don't stand alone in life. And when we pray, we oftentimes don't think about that. We oftentimes don't get our interactions with the whole. We can't comprehend that. We can't comprehend the cause and effect of the flow of our life in the whole of our life. We don't have that view. We just don't have that view. And we don't have a divinely organic view either of how things have to unfold, and the way in which our choices interact with the answer to prayers simultaneously. So, for example, you might, I hope I can say this right, I have to do this right. You're praying for something, and then at the same time, you're filled with doubt and despair, or you're making choices that somehow are contrary to how the prayer can be answered. So heaven has to kind of work with that energy, work with the energetics, the holy energetics that you're generating. It's almost as if heaven, if it could come in and sit you down and say, will you just stay positive for an hour so we can get something done? Will you just stay positive? And for 1 hour, that's all we need, is 1 hour of you staying positive and having a sense of faith and having a sense of trust. We can straighten the wires, and the laws of cause and effect will flow more freely, and everything will flow a little easier. Just stop with the doubt, stop with the despair, and we can get things going a little easier. Does that make sense to you? It kind of works like that. So that's a little bit how prayers, and what I will leave you with holy imagination, is that when you start imagining the worst of things, when your fears get the worst of you, remind yourself that you are going down that track of the power of your imagination, and that you are actually now actively imagining the worst of things, the worst of times, the worst possible things that could happen, and stop yourself. And that's when you hit the grace button. That's when you should say, whoa, I'm doing this. I'm doing exactly what Carolyn said. I'm just dousing myself in dark imaginings. And this is when I have to say, I need some badass grace. I need some grace here. I need some serious grace. I need to imagine myself. I know, I'll imagine myself filled with faith until I get filled with faith. I'll imagine myself not frightened. I will imagine myself and everything's okay. I will imagine somehow or other, I get through this. I will imagine that everything's going to be okay. I will imagine, start a prayer like that. And then say, I will I will turn this over to grace. And just sit with me, God. I'm not going down that path. Okay? That's holy imagination. And really, when you get good at it, and if someone ever said to me, "You're just imagining," I'm like, "You're damn right I am." And there's power in that. There's power, power, power.